Good evening, my name is Deirdre Marriott, and this is my Module 9 Copyright Assignment Presentation number 2 for my INFO5720 class. This is an assignment where I go through the Assure model and talk about my reasonings for my lesson plan. So this objective I pulled straight from the Canvas assignment. I have the link up here if needed. Your second presentation is a discussion of how the project meets the requirements of the Assure model, and I will be addressing each step of the Assure model in each individual slide and discuss my reasoning and my thought process behind my lesson plan. So let's get right into it. The first letter in the Assure model is analyze the learners. Basically, who are we teaching? In the assignment, I was told that we are working with Mrs. Stewart's reading classes. There is no grade given, but I assumed that this could be as young as 5th grade, so I went with that ballpark, 5th graders being the grade I teach currently, and just what I know best. We are also told that they are digital natives, but they lack basic knowledge of copyright. Now, this information was given in the assignment, in the description of it, but if you obviously are in the teaching environment, you can find out this information by implementing a pre-assessment. Ideally, I would use a KWL chart as a bell ringer or as just another exit ticket from like a lesson beforehand about what they knew so I could easily prepare this lesson. And another thing I wanted to add into my lesson was English language learners. Those are that is one of my interests as a teacher, is working with English as a second language. It's safe to assume that in the state of Texas, based on TEA's data from 2020, that you have at least 20% of your student population is English language learners. So in a class of 20, roughly 2 students would speak English as their second language. And this could be a wide variety of levels. They could be zero knowledge of the English language versus they've been speaking it for the last 10 years. But good practices are for ELLs would be to use visuals, clear expectations. I chose to do fill-in-the-blank notes, and key terms are listed at the start of the lesson or on a whiteboard with the objectives. This is also just good practices for good teaching regardless. The first S is to state the standards and the objectives, basically the what are we teaching. My objectives are written in a we will, I will format in the slideshow, which is probably the easiest format for my brain to wrap around. It's also following a what, by, how model that I picked up at one of my more ESL-heavy schools in my teaching career. Basically, it starts with what they are doing, and then you have the conjunction by, and then you say how they are going to do it. And I pulled the verbs from the lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy, understanding and remembering, because I envision this lesson to be more of an introductory lesson, save those critical thinking levels and higher Bloom's verbs for later on down the road. You could have them create posters for the school. Since they are the 5th graders, they would be the oldest in an elementary school typically. That would be something you could do later on with them, but first they've got to get that basic foundation to understand it. So the standards ended up reading something like this. We will discuss the 6 copyright rules or concepts for students by listening actively and taking notes. I will identify copyright rules and demonstrate how to use them by teaching my peers and playing a Book-It. The second S in the Assure model is select strategies and resources. This is the how we are teaching. I knew that I would be doing a presentation lecture format, so I knew whatever I found had to be adapted into a slideshow using either Google Slides or PowerPoint. I found 6 copyright concepts from the Library of Congress, which I've also linked up here as well. And ideally, you would have students take fill-in-the-blank notes while the teacher lectures. You could not see this in the video, but I was imagining it and playing on it as if I was doing that. Down there at the bottom, I just kind of spitballed an idea to have older students or even your 5th grade students creating posters, like I said in a previous slide. But like I said, this is just an introductory lesson. You're not going to worry about reaching that create verb yet. The U in the Assure model is the utilize resources, so how you're using your tools for teaching. I used Google Slides, and ideally you could collaborate on a Google slide. For example, I could collaborate with Miss Stewart, and we could work on this slideshow together in the ample amount of free time that a teacher would have, and then we would present it to the class. Other tools at your disposal would be co-teaching strategies, especially since you would have 2 teachers working on this lesson. You could have both the teachers work through the lecture together. In my case, I chose the one teacher does the lecture while the other teacher walks around and helps the other students model. In my head, I'm not sure if that was presented clearly enough, but I'm sure I said it at the beginning of the other presentation. My slideshow incorporates clip art and other pictures, like my little Bitmoji person, and it showed the different supplies the students needed and the CHAMPS expectations, which is also good for your ELL learners to start associating words with things they know in their language. And like I said, this was a presentation lecture style, which is effective with visual and auditory learners from the multiple intelligence system. The R in the Assure model is require learner response, or how the students are learning. This is a disclaimer that we were unable to complete this during the recording. I would ideally do a turn and talk where the students would describe the concepts to their shoulder partners. Partner A would describe evens, partner B would describe odds, however you would see fit. This could take 3 to 4 minutes. And then using a name-picking system, whether you use popsicle sticks or the Wheel of Names application online, you would pick 6 students and have each one describe one concept in their own words before you moved on to the evaluate portion. Evaluate and revise. How well did we do as teachers? Again, you can't see this in your first presentation, but I had it as students will be able to demonstrate mastery of the copyright rules by scoring high accuracy on a bucket game. Again, you could not see this in the first presentation, but I have created a rubric to score students on the lesson. It is a 4-point scale for 3 different criteria for a total of 12 points. The verbiage here would be students completes all the things fully would be to get a 4. Mostly participating, mostly finishes, mostly engages for the 3. Sometimes, somewhat in the 2. And then you get to the one which is does not. So at minimum, your students could get a 3 out of 12, or at maximum, they could get a 12 out of 12. And if I were to do this lesson in person, maybe I would have a little less fill-in-the-blank notes. I could have a little bit more of a seminar sort of feel where we discuss it, maybe have more small group feeling with it. But overall, this is what I worked with, and this was my initial Assure model lesson planning idea. So that is the end of this recording. Thank you very much for listening.